My daughter replaced me with her dad's new family at her wedding, then blamed me when they abandoned her for vacation. My story begins when I gave birth to my little Emily at 22. Back then, Mark and I were a hopeful college couple, convinced that our love would overcome any obstacle. However, the reality of becoming young parents hit us like a bucket of cold water, especially since Mark was focused on furthering his career. The constant stress and responsibilities ended up breaking our relationship when Emily was barely 2 years old. From that moment on, I had to take care of everything, putting my own dreams on hold while I worked tirelessly to give Emily a stable life. Mark fulfilled his obligation by sending child support money every month and showing up occasionally on weekends, enough to say he was part of Emily's life, but without showing any real commitment as a father. Life took a turn when Emily turned 7 and Mark married Sarah, who already had 2 children from her previous marriage. From the very beginning, Sarah made her position very clear. She wanted to build a united family without divisions, which, in practice, meant that Emily was left in an awkward position within that new home. As time went on, Mark and Sarah had 2 more children, and Emily's presence in that family faded like a shadow. Weekend visits became tense moments, with Sarah displaying a distant attitude that made Emily feel like a stranger in her own father's house. Family trips, celebrations, birthdays, everything happened without her. In Mark and Sarah's family photos, Emily was conspicuously absent, and they always had the same excuse. Oh, she could not make it that day, as if her absence was something casual and unimportant. Despite the pain this caused her, Emily never stopped seeking her father's approval. When she turned 12, I had already remarried a wonderful man who treated her as if she were his own daughter, but that did not fill the void Emily felt from Mark's lack of attention. During her teenage years, I saw her strive to the point of exhaustion to fit into her father's family. She would not hesitate to cancel plans with me and her stepfather at the last minute if the possibility of spending time with them arose, and she would spend endless weekends glued to the phone waiting for an invitation that often ended in disappointment when they told her the plans were just for the immediate family. Last year, Emily gave us the news of her engagement to James, an exceptional man with very traditional family values. As I watched her plan her wedding, I realized that, for her, it was more than a celebration. It was her opportunity to finally present herself as an integral part of Mark's family, something that became especially important because James' parents highly valued the image of a traditional family. One day, Emily invited me to talk about the seating arrangements at the ceremony. With a trembling but determined voice, she explained that she wanted Mark, Sarah, and their children to occupy the first row as her main family, while I would sit further back with my husband. Her justification pierced my heart. She did not want James' conservative family to ask awkward questions about our complicated family situation, preferring to show a picture of a perfect traditional family. Although her words hurt me deeply, I swallowed hard and told her that I understood, that it was her day, and that I would respect her decision. After all, I just wanted her to finally feel that sense of belonging she had been seeking her entire life. The day of the wedding, I arrived early to help with the final preparations. But, an hour before the ceremony, I found Emily alone in the bridal suite, her makeup smeared with tears and her trembling hands covering her face. Between choked sobs, she told me that Mark, Sarah, and their children would not be coming to the wedding. They had won a last-minute all-inclusive vacation package and were already on their way to the airport. According to Mark's message, it was an opportunity too good to pass up, and there was no way to reschedule. Emily was devastated, not only because of their absence, but because she had built the entire image of her wedding around them as her true family. She had bet everything on maintaining that facade of a happy family, and with a simple message, everything had crumbled like a house of cards. Emily's sobs were so loud that I could barely understand what she was asking me. She wanted me to take her father's place in the first row, arguing that otherwise, it would not look good. Her words left me breathless. I, the mother who had been present at every important moment in her life, from her first steps to her graduation, was now just a plan B, an emergency replacement because her father had decided that a vacation was more important than his daughter's wedding. Despite the pain I felt, I could see how devastated Emily was. So, I took a deep breath and took her hands in mine. I helped her fix her smeared makeup, dried her tears, and reassured her, assuring her that everything would be all right. But, as gently as I could, I explained that I would not sit in the first row. I reminded her that she had already presented me as the absent mother, the one who had abandoned her husband and did not care enough to be present, and that sitting in the first row as a last-minute solution would not change the narrative she had chosen to tell. I could not be an impromptu maternal replacement just because others had let her down on her special day. Emily looked at me with a mixture of confusion and pain in her reddened eyes. Gently, I suggested that we remove the reserved signs from the seats so that the guests could sit freely, thus avoiding the image of empty seats where her true family should have been. The ceremony went on as planned, but the tension was palpable in the air. During the reception, I could not help but overhear the surprised whispers of the guests, commenting on how Mark's family had preferred to go on vacation instead of attending the wedding. Emily barely ate a bite during dinner, and at the end of the night, she and James retired early, leaving behind a sea of whispers and confused looks about the family situation. Several days passed without hearing from Emily, except for a short text message where she told me she needed time to process everything that had happened. I respected her need for space, but when she finally came to see me, her reaction stunned me. Instead of the understanding I expected, Emily bitterly accused me of abandoning her on the most important day of her life. She told me it was unforgivable that I had refused to sit in the first row, leaving her alone to face the guests' awkward questions about her family's absence. It was as if she had completely erased from her memory the fact that her father, who should have occupied that seat, had chosen a vacation over her wedding. Somehow, all her anger had been redirected towards me for not stepping in to protect her from the consequences of her own decisions. Emily's accusations hurt me deeply. I found it unbelievable to be listening to her blame me for abandonment after all the years I dedicated to raising her practically alone, with very little help from Mark. It was as if all the memories of my long workdays to provide for her, the sacrifices I made to give her stability, and my constant presence in every important moment of her life had suddenly evaporated. Suddenly, she was acting as if my decision to stay in the seat she herself had assigned me had been an act of intentional malice, completely forgetting that it had been her initial choice. I could not understand how she could be so angry with me when it was her father who had abandoned her, and she herself had asked me to sit in the back. However, I remained calm and tried to explain to her that I had only respected her original wishes, stepping aside to allow her to create the family image she had worked so hard to project. But Emily refused to listen to reason. She insisted that I had humiliated her in front of James' family by refusing to take that seat and allowing her father's absence to be so obvious. She repeated over and over again that I should have played along, regardless of how sudden her request was. I was perplexed by her reaction. For the first time, I realized that Emily was not willing to face the consequences of her own decisions, and that even after being abandoned at her wedding, she still considered her father's family as her true family. Since that conversation, our relationship has become strained and distant. I find it hard to accept that Emily has chosen to direct all her disappointment towards me instead of facing the painful reality of how her father has treated her over the years. I feel trapped in a dead end, wondering if there was ever anything I could have done differently to help her see our family dynamic more clearly. What would you do in my place? How can I approach her and help her see the truth of what really happened? Update 1. I want to begin by expressing my deepest gratitude for the incredible number of responses I have received. I am touched to see how many people have taken the time to share their advice, show their support, and, in some cases, tell me truths I needed to hear. I have spent hours reading every comment, trying to process all the shared perspectives. I never imagined that my story would resonate with so many people or provoke such intense reactions. I would like to address some points that have frequently appeared in the comments. For those who think I acted wrongly at my daughter's wedding, I completely understand your point of view. I understand why some believe I should have put my feelings aside and taken the seat in the first row when Emily asked me to. It was her special day, and perhaps I should have given in for the sake of peace. In fact, this is one of the main reasons why I shared my story here, to get honest perspectives and understand if I could have handled the situation differently. I do not consider myself infallible, and although the situation was complicated, I am always willing to learn from my experiences. To give a little more context, I dedicated my entire life to raising Emily, while her father barely participated in her upbringing. I do not think she owes me anything for this. I decided to be a mother knowing it would involve sacrifices, and I never saw it as something she had to compensate for. However, after all this time, the least I expected was to be treated with respect. At some point, which I cannot pinpoint, Emily's attitude towards me began to change. It was not just a lack of respect, but it turned into a kind of resentment, as if my presence was an obstacle to her being part of her father's perfect family. That is why, when she first asked me to sit in the back, and then, at the last minute, expected me to take her father's place in the first row, I felt deeply hurt, not just as a mother, but as a person. Emily was mature enough to understand the decisions I had made for her, but instead, she chose to treat me as if I were an inconvenience in her life. The current situation has become even more complicated. Emily has begun sharing her version of events with the extended family, presenting a very different narrative. Suddenly, I am being portrayed as the bitter and jealous ex-wife who refused to help her daughter on her special day. According to what some relatives have told me, Emily has told them that I refused to cooperate because I was upset that Mark and his family were sitting in front of me. She has even gone so far as to insinuate that I am jealous of the relationship between Mark and Sarah, which could not be further from the truth. I got over that relationship a long time ago, and my husband has been a wonderful partner and an exceptional father figure to Emily. I never intended to play petty games with Mark or his family. All I wanted was to be a part of Emily's life without being treated like second best. Now there is a whole wave of relatives who have come to her defense, convinced that I am the cruel mother who ruined her daughter's wedding. The most disconcerting thing is that these same relatives know perfectly well the story of how Mark treated Emily and me. They know that I practically raised her alone, and they are aware of all the times Mark canceled plans with her, or went on trips without including her. But somehow, all those details have been conveniently forgotten in the face of Emily's version. I cannot deny that all of this hurts me deeply. I have received numerous angry calls and messages from relatives who barely know the situation, telling me that I should have been more mature and swallowed my pride for Emily's sake. I never realized how deep Emily's attachment to the idealized image of her father was until now. Her version of what happened at the wedding paints me as someone who had a grudge against her father's family and wanted attention. But the reality is that I was only respecting what she herself had asked me to do, even though it hurt me to do so. Honestly, a part of me regrets not just sitting in the front row and pretending everything was fine. Maybe it would have been easier for Emily, and maybe I would not be facing this backlash from our family. But at the same time, I feel that taking that seat as a surrogate mother would have invalidated all the years I spent being her only constant support. I feel torn because I love her and I want her happiness. But I wonder, to what extent should a parent compromise their dignity before it starts to damage their self-respect? I never thought that maintaining my position, silently respecting her original seating plan, would turn into a scandal of this magnitude. My husband, bless him, has been a pillar of support throughout this process. He constantly reminds me that I did nothing wrong by respecting Emily's original wishes and that her post-wedding reaction reflects more her own internal struggles than anything else. He tries to get me to focus on the positive, but it is hard not to feel hurt, especially now that the family drama Emily has unleashed has put me on the defensive. I feel like every day I have to justify why I did not step in to save Emily from the consequences of her own decisions. To complicate matters further, James, her new husband, contacted me directly. He was polite but firm in expressing his disappointment at how the wedding day unfolded, suggesting that perhaps I could have done more to support Emily. I can tell he is caught between supporting his wife and understanding the true nature of what happened. But it adds to my pain to know that even he might think I failed Emily. I could sense in his voice that he does not fully understand the weight of my experience as Emily's mother, the long years of being her sole constant support, and now he is taking her side, even though he himself was upset with her father for abandoning her on her special day. I never expected the situation to escalate this way, and now I wonder if there is any way to reconcile without sacrificing my own dignity. The idea of apologizing just to keep the peace does not seem right to me, but at the same time, I do not want this to create a permanent rift between us. I am trying to find a middle ground where I can maintain my boundaries while also building a bridge towards reconciliation. But honestly, I feel lost. Emily is my only daughter, and as painful as her actions are, I still want to maintain a relationship with her. However, if that relationship involves pretending that her father was a good father or minimizing my role in her life, I am not sure I can do it. Thanks again to everyone who has shared their thoughts and advice. This has been an incredibly difficult emotional journey, and I am truly grateful for the support. I will keep you updated if anything changes. For now, I feel like I am at a crossroads, trying to find a path that will bring us closer without compromising my role as her mother. Update 2. I am writing again with more news, and I wish it were under better circumstances. After the responses to my initial post, I have tried to remain calm, reminding myself that this situation is emotionally complex for everyone involved. But honestly, I am astonished by how things have evolved since the wedding. Just when I thought the waters might calm and things would start to settle, Mark decided to make his appearance and further deepen the wound. I had begun to feel that some family members might be willing to see my perspective, especially after receiving numerous messages about the importance of keeping the peace and putting the past behind us. But then, without warning, I received a call from Mark. At first, I almost felt relief, thinking that he was finally reaching out to take some responsibility for the chaos his absence had caused at the wedding. After all, he had abandoned Emily on one of the most important days of her life, leaving her visibly devastated. But instead of offering any kind of apology, Mark launched straight into criticizing me. He called me an irresponsible mother for not stepping in to take care of our daughter when he could not be present. He even used the words, "bad mother," telling me I should have put aside any personal feelings and done what was necessary for Emily. Hearing these accusations from him, after years of staying on the sidelines while I raised our daughter alone, was one of the most shocking moments I have experienced in a long time. His audacity in calling me to criticize my parenting after missing the wedding for a vacation stunned me. My response was probably more emotional than it should have been. I told him he had absolutely no right to question my role as a mother, especially considering all the times he had missed important events, holidays, and crucial moments in Emily's life. I reminded him that he was the one who had let her down when she was vulnerable and feeling abandoned, not me. I tried to keep my tone controlled, but I made it very clear that I was not going to let him portray me as the villain while he ran off to play happy family with Sarah and her kids on some paradise beach. Just when I thought this would be the end of it, I started receiving furious messages from Emily. She instantly took her father's side, accusing me of being unsupportive and of abandoning her at her wedding. She even accused me of making the day about me by refusing to sit in the front row when she asked me to. It was as if our entire pre-wedding conversation about her seating preferences had been erased from her memory. She was acting as if I had deliberately tried to hurt her or refused to be there, which could not be further from the truth. I kept asking her if she understood that her father had been completely absent from the wedding, but she avoided answering directly. When I asked her about the supposed reason that made his absence understandable, she dodged the question, accusing me of not being empathetic enough. My husband keeps reminding me not to let her words affect me, to stay firm but open, and that this is just part of Emily's learning process. However, it is hard to maintain that perspective because I worry that in her attempt to create this image of a perfect family with Mark, she is refusing to see reality. I tried to explain this to her gently, reminding her of all the previous times Mark had disappointed her, but each attempt was met with more defensive messages. She kept mentioning the genuine reason why he missed the wedding, but refused to actually explain what that reason was. It is as if she wants me to believe there is something I am not seeing, some great justification that explains her father's actions. But deep down, I know that is not the case. If there had been a valid reason, she would not have been crying in her dressing room, feeling devastated and humiliated. Emily's messages have been constant, accusing me of turning her special day into a show by not sitting in the front row and not following her vision of family unity. It is almost as if she has completely rewritten the wedding day in her mind to make me responsible for every little setback. She has even started bringing up old childhood resentments that I thought we had overcome, old frustrations she had never really expressed, like not being able to attend every school trip or not being able to afford all the luxuries her stepsisters had. It feels like everything is coming to the surface all at once, and suddenly, my entire track record as a mother is being questioned. I have tried to remain understanding, to respond with love, But every time I mention the slightest thing about my dedication to raising her, she uses it against me, accusing me of being self-centered. What hurts me the most is seeing how she strives to defend her father, even when the facts do not make sense. I keep reminding myself that she is hurt and might not be thinking clearly, that maybe she is just struggling to process her emotions. But it is painful to see her act as if the only person who really abandoned her, Mark, is somehow the victim in all of this. My husband has suggested that I give her space, hoping that time will help her see things more clearly. I am trying to follow that advice, but it is hard to stay on the sidelines while my own daughter treats me like the enemy. Some family members have reached out to offer their support, saying they understand what I am going through, but others have accepted Emily's version of events. They are now calling and messaging me, telling me that I need to get over my issues and that family should come first. The irony of all this breaks my heart. I dedicated every moment of my life to making sure Emily was my priority, and now it seems like all of that has been forgotten. I invested all my time and energy into making her feel loved and valued, and here we are, as if none of that mattered. As much as it hurts, I know I cannot force her to understand everything it meant to raise her. I cannot force her to see Mark as he really is if she is not ready to accept it. It is as if she is blinded by her need for her father's approval, clinging to the hope that someday he will give her the attention she has always craved. I have tried to be patient and give her the space she needs, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to keep defending myself to the only person I thought would always be on my side. I remain hopeful that someday Emily will be able to see the whole situation clearly. Maybe there will come a time when she realizes that this perfect image she has created of her father's family is not real. In the meantime, I can only lean on the few friends and family who know the truth and understand what I am going through. I will keep you updated if anything changes or if Emily has a change of heart. Thank you for all your support and understanding. Update 3. Hello everyone. I think this will be my last update, and I want to share with you how things have changed in the last few days. It has been a roller coaster of emotions, but it finally seems like we are reaching a point of understanding. After my last update, I was determined to keep my distance and give Emily the time she needed. But then something unexpected happened. James, her husband, contacted me. He wanted to talk about everything that had happened since the wedding, and I realized that things in their home were not easy either. He told me that he was starting to see the whole picture more clearly. Apparently, shortly after Mark returned from his vacation with Sarah and the kids, he went straight to Emily's house. James explained to me that Emily was still hurt about the wedding, but Mark did not even give her a chance to express it. He arrived with a prepared speech and did not let her speak. He went into dramatic apologies, saying how bad he felt about missing her big day, talked about his supposed remorse, and gave his sincere reasons, mentioning how much he would have liked to walk her down the aisle. But then he turned it around and started talking about how his obligations to Sarah's children had to be his priority, that we all make sacrifices, and that he hoped Emily understood that he was doing the best he could as a father in his current situation. What struck me the most was hearing James' perspective on all of this. He told me that as Mark went on with his speech, he noticed how Emily changed completely. It was as if she had been waiting her whole life to hear any kind of explanation from her father. The moment Mark started talking, Emily seemed to forget all the times he had disappointed her. Despite everything he had done, Emily was more than willing to accept his half-hearted excuses and return to the same old pattern justifying her father's actions. When she later told James about the conversation, she was convinced that Mark's absence had been unavoidable and that I had exaggerated the whole situation. James confessed to me that this reaction had surprised him. He had personally seen how Mark's actions had affected Emily during the wedding and all the drama that followed. To him, it was obvious that Mark's apology was just a way to shift the blame. But when he tried to tell Emily this, she became defensive, insisting that her father's reasons were valid and that I was the one who was wrong for not being able to get over the past. James was honest with me and told me that this caused a major argument between them. He tried to explain to her that I had always been there for her and that I had done nothing to hurt her, suggesting that maybe she was being manipulated by someone more interested in protecting their image than in being a real father. At that point, James decided to talk to some family members who had been at the wedding. He wanted to better understand the situation and hear different points of view. By talking to people who knew how much I had cared for Emily and everything I had done to support her growing up, his understanding of the situation became clearer. From his perspective, it was evident that this was not a simple misunderstanding, but the latest example of a pattern that had been repeating itself for years. After these conversations, James spoke to Emily again, but this time he was more direct about his concerns. He told her how sad he was to see her willing to forgive her father for not being at her wedding, all to maintain an image of a perfect family that did not really exist. He encouraged her to think about who had always been by her side, who had never let her down. James admitted to me that the conversation was not easy and that it was not well received at first. Emily resisted listening and kept insisting that I was the cause of the problem. But he did not give up. He asked her to try to see everything from a new perspective. Although Emily resisted at first, something seemed to change in her shortly after her conversation with James. She decided to go see her father. This visit turned out to be exactly what she needed to open her eyes. According to James, Emily arrived at her father's house expecting to find understanding and some concern for how she was feeling. Instead, she found a Mark who barely had time for her. In fact, he almost completely ignored her, telling her that he was busy preparing for another business trip and that if she needed to finish her drama quickly, he could give her a few minutes. This cold attitude finally made Emily see reality. For years, she had been trying to fit into a family that would always put her last. It was a painful but necessary realization. She left there feeling hurt and angry, but she finally understood that the problem was not me, nor how I had handled things at the wedding, but her father's constant lack of interest and responsibility. She needed a few days to process everything, but I finally received a call from her. Her voice sounded different, remorseful, very different from the defensive person of the past few weeks. She confessed that she had allowed herself to believe in an idealized version of her father, one where he could be the perfect dad she had always wanted, and that in the process, she had directed all her pain and anger towards me. Emily acknowledged that she had pushed me aside, blinded by her need to gain her father's approval. She apologized for the things she had said and for treating me like a last-minute option at her wedding, instead of acknowledging everything I had done as her main support throughout her life. During our conversation, Emily admitted that she had always been afraid to face the truth about her father because it would mean giving up something she had clung to for almost her entire life. But now she understood that my decision to keep my place at the wedding had not been a rejection of her, but an act of self-respect, a way of showing her that I was not willing to be treated as an afterthought. It would be a lie to say that everything has magically been fixed with an apology, and although I wish Emily had not had to go through so much pain to see things clearly, I am glad that she is beginning to see the reality of her family situation. Emily and I have agreed to see each other soon to talk more openly about everything. Her relationship with James is better, and we both know it will take time to rebuild what has been damaged. But I am hopeful that little by little, we will be able to create a new understanding and mutual respect.